I did the same thing, Michelle. Yes.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and please remain standing for the invocation by the Reverend William Wilson of Choose United Methodist Church. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we come to you this day with heavy hearts in the world situation. We pray for the people in Ukraine and the hurt and pain that they are being inflicted upon. Bless the whole region of that world for peace to come. And we pray for the softening of hearts. We thank you for our community here in Gloucester Township. We thank you for what you have been doing and are doing in the midst of our lives. We pray your blessing upon our leadership, upon those who care for our needs day in and day out. And we pray that we might truly be one people together with you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Wilson. Before we start our meeting, and I'm not sure if we'll have an opportunity to see him before he retires. Last month, Reverend Wilson announced that he was retiring from the ministry after 45 years. He's been pastor at Choose United Methodist Church for the last 14 years and will be retiring on June 3rd. He has been an active community member, has opened up his church to many activities throughout the township, and has been present in the last 14 years. So we appreciate everything you've done here in the township with the ministerium and being the leader that you have been for the last 14 years and 45 years in the ministry of the United Methodist Church. Thank you very much. Roll call, please. Commencement statement. Sorry. This regular meeting of the Township Council is being held in accordance with the schedule of the meetings of the Township Council, established and adopted by the Township Council, which schedule designated the time, date, and place of this meeting. Adequate public notice of this meeting has been provided pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act. We are using an electronic amplifying and recording device in order to obtain a clear and audible record and request all those wishing to speak be recognized and state your name and address directly to the microphone. The recording device will be so utilized by the Township Clerk's Office for the preparation of minutes and shall be the official record of the Township Council meetings. Madam Clerk, ma'am, the roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison.
He is on vacation.
Ms. Grace. Here. Mr. Mignon.
Here.
Mrs. Stubbs. Present. Mrs. Winters. Here. Mrs. Trotto. Here. Mr. Mercado.
Present.
Mr. Carlemere.
Here.
Mr. Curtis.
Here.
Chief Harkins.
Here.
Mr. Chadwell.
Here. We now have the public portion. This is for agenda items only. There is a 15-minute time period for the public portion. Anyone can address council regarding public portion, agenda items. Each speaker is entitled to 3 minutes. Is there anyone that would like to speak on any agenda items? Mr. Polidoro.
Good evening, Council. Ray Polidoro from the Historic Village of Ariel.
Good evening.
I have one request that's basically related to the agenda. As I've missed the last couple meetings, I've tried to enjoy watching it on the live stream. However, it's extremely difficult when people are not sitting up close to the microphones and microphones are not with you and you're not sitting up straight and getting into that. I hate to sound like a school teacher. I know you heard this in school, but it's vital. And when you guys are responding to questions, that we hear what it is you're saying, especially when you guys are down here. It would be a great favor to myself when I'm watching and other people that are watching, if you wouldn't mind, bring your microphones in close and speaking in the mic so that we can hear you on the audio. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Heimball, I saw your hand was up.
Good evening, Peter Heimball, 2 Morningstar Court.
Good evening.
I see the MPP implementation plan is on the agenda. Glad to see the brain trust for that plan is here. What caught my eye, obviously, as I went right to the budget for that plan, was the big number for the bank building facade. But what's going to be involved?
So if you could, it's on the consent agenda, but I'm going to pull it off. I'm going to make a motion to pull it off so we can discuss that a
Okay.
little bit more in depth. If you want to save your questions for that, is that fine?
What is that, a separate portion?
No, I just wanted to discuss the implementation of it, talk about some of the things that are involved in it.
Okay.
That may answer some of your questions that you may have.
Also had a question. I see there's a budget for the different years of this project. What is the fiscal year considered for this project? Is it January through December? Is that what we're considering a budget year
Jake,
for this
January
project?
through December.
Some of the spending happened prior to January though, right? Some consulting, and so will that just be rolled in as part of year 1, I guess?
Yes,
Okay.
that's part of year 1.
Okay. Yeah, I hope there's a robust discussion then on the plan when you take it off the agenda. I'm curious to hear that. I think capital spending, I know there will be a second reading and a public hearing of that next month, but I just wanted to ask a general question. When this bond ordinance is passed, what's the process to actually go out and then borrow the funds? Does it happen a month later all at one time, or how? I'm thinking more of a cash management question.
Okay.
How is this money actually borrowed once the bond ordinance is approved?
Mr. Cars, can you walk us through that?
Sure. The bond ordinance, once it's approved, it has its second reading, public hearing, assuming it's approved at that meeting. Has a 20-day estoppel period, after which the ordinance itself authorizes me as business administrator to either initiate the floating of a note or to arrange for permanent financing. At this point in time, we do not have a date as to when we would do that, and we don't have a plan for that at this time.
But when you make that decision and one of those two things happens, you borrow the whole, in this case, 9.2 million or something
Yes.
like that, all at one time.
Yes.
Is that effective? Can we improve the cash flow, the cash management? You know, we're borrowing money all at one shot, and we all know it takes 12, 24 months to spend that as projects come online and are shovel ready and things like that. So this cash is borrowed, but just sitting in a fund doing nothing. Is there a way to better manage the cash that we only borrow when needed kind of So we're utilizing cash better and not borrowing money than just having it sit. Is there a better way for cash management?
I'm not sure what you're asking. If it's what I think it is.
Well, let's just say you spent $300,000
If it's
per.
what I think it is, if I can finish, please.
Well, I wouldn't
It's
tell you.
what
I don't
I
want you to
think.
think. I want
I'm going to
explain.
explain to you what I
Okay.
think it is.
Gentlemen, he's
No,
going to answer that, and then you're
Well,
done.
I want
I'll
to
give
clarify
you
my
the
question.
He's
That's
going
all.
to answer it.
Okay.
You're going over your 3 minutes. We know it's 3 minutes. He's
So
gonna
let's
answer
say,
it, and if there's more time, you can come back.
hypothetically, it's $8 million. What you're suggesting is that you borrow incrementally as you see that you need it. The concern I would have with that is there are certain financial costs associated with going out even for a note. Those notes are competitively bid. We utilize our financial consultant. We also consult with bond counsel. So each time you do that, you're incurring additional costs. So I think the additional cost that you would incur in doing such a plan would outweigh the benefit.
Fees, like
Yeah.
these fees.
Correct.
Is there a way to mitigate those, to minimize those fees? I
No,
mean,
because each time you're initiating that,
Yeah.
once you leave that.
but you don't have to
moment in time.
re-study the whole market every time.
I don't know
possibly.
anybody that finances a bond ordinance in such a way.
Okay,
Pete.
thank you.
Is there anyone else? Mr. Krug?
Evening, Council. Paul Krug, Blackwood Estates. Council President, I just want to make sure I understood. Your intent is to pull Resolution 70 from this evening and push it to another meeting?
No, to discuss it in depth. To have a discussion. To talk about it.
I don't quite understand. I haven't been to a meeting where you've done this
Well, I
before.
wanted to do that because this is an important piece of the work that we're doing here. It's a resolution to address downtown Blackwood, something that you're passionate about, and people are shaking their head and they want to hear about it. So that's why I'm pulling it off.
Not attacking you, sir.
No,
Just
no, I'm not
asking
attacking.
what's.
I'm pulling it off because I wanted Jake and Regina to talk a little bit about it and also share it with our council members. I saw a copy of the implementation plan. If we're going to approve an implementation plan to submit, I wanted the residents and the council to know about it. That's why we'll put it up to a vote, but I just wanted to take it off to discuss it, to vote on it separately.
Okay, so the opportunity to talk about it for citizens is now.
Yes.
Okay. All right, understood. So then the bank property that Pete was discussing, the plan, at least filling in the gaps, would be $450,000 of state grant money for some type of preservation, $25,000 from the MPP, and $175,000 from the township.
Yep. In the first year's budget.
Okay. And that $175,000 from the township, that comes out of the municipal budget?
Most likely capital budget.
Okay, so what's going to be bonded tonight, potentially?
It is listed within the capital budget.
Okay, understood. Gotcha.
See,
Okay. And does that cost, is that including whatever maintenance costs are involved to bring that building up to proper code? Or is that just to purchase the land and the building?
I'm not quite sure. Well, Jake, we'll say that when we discuss it. We can address that when we talk about the resolution.
Okay. Hard for me to say much more without additional clarity being given, but I will just bring to council's attention that we had purchased a building under these similar circumstances without knowing what maintenance was needed, and then we needed to do mold remediation and HVAC upgrades. So there could be significant cost to the local municipal taxpayer if we don't know the set of circumstances. So I would earmark that particular line item potentially as needing additional financial assistance. And that's all I can really say until hopefully Jake can provide more clarity.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Mr. Sweet.
Good evening, council. Sam Sweet from Ariel.
Good evening.
We're not allowed to ask questions about, other than the Blackwood once Jake gives his report, because what if we have questions on his report?
You can ask questions on the second public portion if you like.
But you've already voted on it then.
Yeah, but you can ask questions.
Well, but wouldn't it,
Sam, in any other scenario, it would be a consent agenda.
we understand that, but this isn't any other scenario.
No, I decided I would like to make a motion to provide a presentation and have a discussion. But if you have additional questions, you can ask afterwards, or you can ask them now, or they may be addressed during this presentation.
Well, I don't have any
Or maybe
questions.
my motion doesn't go through and there isn't a second and we just have it on the consent agenda.
Okay, but you're changing the rules, so we're asking, I'm
I'm
polite.
not changing the rules.
You've never pulled something off of consent agenda to have a discussion in the time that I've been coming here.
Okay.
So now, since you're doing that, we're asking politely if we can ask questions once they make their presentation.
You can make any comments during the second public portion.
So then
Right,
that's,
this second public portion.
before the vote, we can't ask any questions on his presentation.
You can ask questions of me, I'll see what I can answer, but the second public portion, you can ask questions.
But we don't know his presentation.
Okay.
All right. With regards to the capital budget, I made a request to Mr. Cardis to get the detail of it. He said he was going to give you a call and make sure that was okay once it was voted on.
You can receive that tomorrow morning.
Why can't we receive it tonight like I have in the past?
Members of council, I asked for Mr. Cars there are some questions I had regarding members of council received it today. I wanted them to take a look at it. You could receive it tomorrow morning,
Am I stopping in or via email?
whatever you like to do.
Can I stop in?
You can stop in.
Stop in?
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
available to anyone else out in the public.
As well it should be. And with regards to the bond ordinance, I know Mr. Heimel said about basically just in time, borrowing or incrementally borrowing, and you said the fees were there. Has a cost study analysis been done on that?
No.
So we don't know the answer then.
We know the fees associated.
Okay, but has a cost analysis, if we know the fees,
No,
it has not been done.
and the plan is to borrow the entire amount when we're ready to borrow that.
And then we sit on some of it because it's been traditionally that we early borrow. And we sit on things such as, I'll have to go through my notes, but there are projects that we've sat on for 1 to 2 years.
I would think
pre-COVID.
most of this is going to be expedited rather rapidly.
All right, and why are we borrowing so much? I know we have a lot of work to do, but we're getting 6.8 million in COVID money, and some of that should be earmarked for the capital budgets, which would actually lower the amount, because if we're borrowing it again, I'll go to the same story. If we're borrowing, it increases our debt service, which increases our taxes. So wouldn't it behoove us to take some of that money from COVID? We got 3.4 last year, we're getting 3.4 this year, and earmark it for those fixed assets or capital budgets and lower the amount that we're borrowing?
State of New Jersey has not issued guidelines on how that money is to be spent. Everybody's waiting for a local finance notice. It has not come out yet.
I believe you had said the last meeting that it was earmarked for lost revenue, which it appears that Gloucester Township luckily hasn't lost much revenue. Or if they lost it in one area, they increased it in another. It was also marked for infrastructure, which I believe is the capital budgets.
That's a big array, lost revenue and capital budgets. And we have lost revenue.
In certain areas, but we've also gained revenue in others.
There
So in the
again,
aggregate,
no one can move forward with anything until the state of New Jersey issues the local finance notice indicating what we're supposed to do with the money.
So then when you said at the last meeting or a month ago that this money is earmarked for lost revenue, keeping people employed, and also capital budgets, that would have been incorrect? Or was that an assumption?
According to the guidelines at the time.
So they changed the
Final
guidelines?
Guidelines have not been issued yet.
Wait a minute, you said the guidelines at the time, so now new guidelines? So they're
Guidelines from the federal government. If you want to go back, listen to the tape, please, I implore you to do so. I explained to you the guidelines that we received were from the federal government to the state. The state is now going to release guidelines to all the municipalities that are receiving an all the entities receiving, whether it's school boards, municipalities, MUAs, or whoever's getting this money, and they're going to tell you how this money is going to be spent. That's going to be in a local finance notice, which has not been issued.
So then
Thank
we,
you, Mr. Carson. Mr. Sweet, your time is up. Thank you. Now, in the public portion, ordinance first reading is introduction. There'll be a hearing at the second reading. Bond ordinance authorizing the completion of various capital improvements and the acquisition of various pieces of capital equipment in for the Township of Gloucester, County of Camden, New Jersey, appropriating the sum of $9,207,922. Therefore, authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds or bond anticipation notes of the Township of Gloucester, County of Camden, New Jersey, in the aggregate principal amount of up to $8,747,526, making certain determinations and covenants and authorizing certain related actions in connections with the foregoing. This includes reconstruction and repaving of various sidewalks and curbs, various drainage improvements to township's recreational buildings and facilities, acquisition and installment of lighting and traffic signals, acquisition of heavy equipment for public works and the MUA, acquisition of real property for the public works department, undertaking improvements to downtown Blackwood, various equipment for parks and rec, improvements for our parks and rec department, acquisition of office and computer equipment, and acquisition of various equipment for the police department. I entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the question. Roll call, please.
Ms. Grace?
Yes.
Mr. Mignone?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next is ordinance, the second reading. There will be a public hearing for calendar year 2022. Ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank. This allows the township to increase the budget to 3.5% of the previous year's final appropriation, and also allows the township to establish a cap bank. Mr. Carr, is there anything you want to add to that?
The established cap by the state of New Jersey for this particular year, 2022 calendar year, was 2.5%. This will enable you to go to 3.5%. Most importantly, it allows you to, as you pointed out, bank cap.
In the next succeeding years, if there's funds available. Okay. I'll open up the public hearing. Anyone like to speak on this? Seeing none, close the public hearing. I entertain a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Ms. Grace?
Yes.
Mr. Mignone?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next is our consent agenda. Before we do that, I'd like to make a motion to have resolution 2202-070 taken off the consent agenda and put on the regular agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
On the question, roll call, please.
Ms. Grace?
Yes.
Mr. Mignone?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next, I'll entertain the motion for the consent agenda as amended.
I'll
Have a
make that
Thank
motion.
you. On the question, excuse me, second?
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Ms. Grace?
Yes.
Mr. Mignone?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Resolution 2202-070, resolution of Township Council of the Township of Gloucester, County of Camden, State of New Jersey, adopting the Neighborhood Preservation Program Implementation Plan. As you well know, we received the MVP grant, and there has been a group that has been working to address the downtown Blackwood area. This plan has many strategic goals and also designated a 5-year project budget. Some of those strategies and goals, and I'll let Jake and Regina join in, designating additional parking for downtown Blackwood, having blade signs. These are signs that extend out from buildings that identify the certain businesses. So if it's Holy Tomato, they're having the Holy Tomato sign that's coming out. It's Gin, is it Wild Gin? No, Wild Ginger's the place down in Berlin called Mystic Ginger. Having a signage that goes out, that extends out. And I would imagine it's all coordinated in one particular color. Streetscape improvements to Harwin Park. A website to highlight the area. For vacant buildings to have temporary vinyl artwork for those for vacant buildings. Providing facade grants to business owners and homeowners in that area. Having a performing arts advisory team, pop-up shops and setups, and bank building facade renovation. So the bank building on the corner of Church and the Black Horse Pike. So I'm going to hand it off to Jake and Regina, who have led this MPP effort. They have met almost on a weekly basis with stakeholders in that particular area. And the reason I asked to take this resolution off the consent agenda because I wanted our colleagues and also the public to be aware of the work that they've been doing there, and that's earmarked for that area. Jake, Regina?
Members of the council, council president, good evening. How are you tonight?
Good evening.
First of all, I wanted to say thank you. There's been a lot of support for this implementation planning process as we've worked through it, both from the council and from the mayor, and it is very much appreciated. It's a lot easier to work through a process like this when you've got the support and help of the local officials. So thank you very much for that. Stood before you a couple of months ago and talked about this application when we were first putting it together, and got the designation. For those that are unaware, it is a 5-year designation. It's $100,000 per year over that 5 years, strictly into the project budget. The projects, the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs is the one that provides the funding and encourages projects for economic and community development purposes. They like more smaller projects than 1 or 2 big projects. They try to focus on visible and tangible change within the NPP district, especially through the first couple of years, which is something that your stakeholder team really focused a lot on this first year, as you can see from the plan that they came up with. All of the projects that are included in the implementation plan have to be backed by some sort of community feedback or community engagement. So there was a business focus group and a resident focus group that was held in December. Did we do that right? Yeah. We had those 2 meetings, had really good attendance, really good conversations. There were a couple hours each. There was also a community survey that went out that gave residents and residents of that particular district, and then anybody in Gloucester Township, the ability to tell us what they thought of the area and thought how they thought we could improve it. So all that feedback came to your stakeholder team, and your stakeholder team used that to develop the projects that you see in the budget in front of you. So I'm optimistic. I think that there's a lot of potential visible and tangible change coming. I think residents in the district and people passing through are really going to feel some of these changes that are coming. You mentioned the blade signs. There's a lot of character that comes with projects like that. The vinyl coverings for the abandoned buildings help get you away from that broken window theory where things seem to be going downhill. So I think there's a lot of positive in here. A couple of comments I want to make just based on some of the questions I got earlier. The budget that was in this implementation plan is it's a plan and it's a guide, but the township isn't committed 100% to doing these specific projects for this specific cost. So if one project comes up a little short and one project has a little extra money, you can move that money around throughout the year. The bank building, which I'll talk about in a second, there's a potential for that to not happen in 22. It may be a 23 project. That funding can be reallocated. As I was telling Mr. Heimbaugh before the meeting today, all of the projects in this implementation plan have to be completed by the end of 2022. So this isn't a plan that gets approved and sits on a shelf somewhere and collects dust. These projects have to be completed by the end of this year so we can start planning the spend for next year. The state did require us to put together a 5-year budget. For anybody that's looked through the 5-year budget, you'll notice there's one line item that says other projects, and it's about half the funding. That's even less. That's even more of a guideline, a little bit more ephemeral than kind of the other ones are. And there's an implementation planning process that happens at the beginning of each year where you set your plan for the next year. It's not as involved as the initial one is, but you kind of take off from your first budget and work from there. So those will get set in stone as you work through the years of the program. Specifically with the bank project, and a couple of questions I heard, and I got a couple before the meeting tonight. Right now, there are some things in flux in terms of the funding for that building and the cost of what a potential acquisition and rehabilitation of that building would cost. So the numbers that are in this budget are not necessarily set in stone. We're currently, I believe the township has ordered an appraisal on that property to understand what the cost of that property is going to be, should the township be interested in purchasing it. There is a funding program that's supposed to be coming down. I have to make sure I say that the right way. From the state through DCA that could potentially provide the funding for the acquisition of that building. That funding could also potentially provide a substantial amount of funding for the rehabilitation of that building as well. There are some other sources of funding that may be available. The CDBG CV budget may have some funding available in it. There are state and federal historic grants that would certainly apply to that building considering its age and contributions to the historic district over there. And there are some other grant programs that are available. So right now the actual funding picture is not very clear and we're working through that. One of the other things that's helping to kind of put a box around that, I believe this week or early next week, there will be a historical architect and a structural engineer that will be visiting the building. We've arranged for them to have access to that building so they could go in and take a look. At that point, we should get an idea of what it's going to cost to rehabilitate that building, both from a structural and mechanical standpoint. After that, there will also be an environmental engineer. I heard the concern about, not knowing what you're getting into. All of those things should be settled before, anybody moves forward with anything, I believe. So we should have those estimates and some idea of how much work is going to be in that building before any of these other things come to fruition.
Thank you, Jake.
I think that's all I got. Any questions I can answer?
Jeannie, you like to add anything?
No, I think they covered everything.
I talk a lot, so she doesn't have to.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? On the question? Roll call, please.
Ms. Grace? Mr. Mignon?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes.
Resolution 72, resolution to make budget transfers between appropriation reserves and the calendar year 2021 current fund budget.
May I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Ms. Grace?
Yes.
Mr. Mignon?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. We have a GTE Gov access email. This is from Denise Coyne at 1060 Choose Landing Road, Laurel Springs. In October of 2006, the Housing Authority purchased 15 acres of block 12301, lot 1. Gloucester Township purchased 10 acres of that land from the Housing Authority in 2012. Senior Campus 1 was built on the other 5 acres. The remainder of the block 12301, lot 1, is included in the township's current housing element and fair share plan. The plan allows for 370 multi-family units, 20% of which will be affordable. A report from the Planning Board to Council from 2005 entitled Lakeland Complex Phase 1, Block 12301 Redevelopment Plan indicated that Block 12301 has some special environmental issues due to the location of the county's hospital former landfill, power plant, and a closed sewage treatment plant. The now demolished hospital waste also may have been contaminated with lead paint and asbestos. All future redevelopment projects should require restrictive covenants in the property deed to notify future owners of the site's potential contamination, remediation, and usage limitations. My questions are, 1, was a NJDEP acceptable preliminary assessment site investigation analysis to identify and evaluate contamination issues completed on any of the land in block 12301. 2, was any of the contamination remediated? And 3, was a no further action letter received from NJDEP for block 12301. Thank you. So we reached out to Mr. Bach, who works with our housing authority in the township here, and I have a comprehensive answer. It's going to take a few minutes. So here we go. And question number 1 was an acceptable preliminary site assessment, site investigation analysis to identify and evaluate contamination issues completed on any of the land in block 12301. Yes. After the initial 2005 Phase 1 redevelopment plan, it was prepared by Ed Fox of Camden County Improvement Authority. They were NJDEP compliant environmental reports prepared for these 3 areas of block 12301 associated with the township housing element and fair share plan. These include a Phase 1 environmental site assessment block 12301, lot 1, 5-acre parcel prepared by Acer Associates LLC and dated September 12, 2007. No areas of concerns were listed, and a Phase 2 study was not recommended by Acer. This property is now designated as Lot 3 and contains the Housing Authority's Senior Campus 1. Phase 1 environmental site assessment block 12301, lot 1, a 10-acre parcel prepared by Acer Associates and dated September 12, 2007. No area of concerns were listed, and a Phase 2 study was not recommended by Acer. This property is now designated as Lot 4 and remains undeveloped. This parcel is included in the township housing element and fair share plan to contain up to a total of 250 multifamily units, of which 50 are to be inclusionary affordable units. Phase 2 site investigation block 12301, lots 1 and 1.02 were prepared by Land Dimensions Engineering and dated June 8, 2009. This report includes the 18 acres of developable land included in the township's housing element and fair share plan, and it contains up to 370 total multifamily units, of which 74 are to be included or to be inclusionary affordable units. The subject 18 acres of developable land were specifically selected to not contain any of the areas of concern listed in the Phase 2 investigation. In addition, the 18 acres of developable land do not contain any environmentally sensitive areas such as wetlands, wetlands buffer, and floor hazard areas as mapped by the NJDEP. Question number 2, was any of the contamination remediated? In specific regard to the 3 areas of block 12301 associated with the township housing element and fair share plan, the 5-acre parcel of block 12301, which contains Senior Campus 1, was constructed in accordance with the recommendations contained in the Phase 1 environmental site assessment block 12301, lot 1, 5-acre parcel dated September 12, 2007. No remediation which required NJDEP oversight was required. As the vacant 10-acre parcel remains vacant, no work associated with the recommendations of the Phase 1 environmental site assessment block 12301, lot 1, 10-acre parcel dated September 12, 2007 has been completed to date. As of 2007, no remediation which required NJDEP oversight was required. When developed, it is anticipated that a New Jersey licensed site remediation professional will be retained by the developer to advise as to current requirements. The 18 acres of developable land included in the township's plan do not contain areas of concerns as delineated in the Phase 2 site investigation report block 12301, lots 1 and 1.02 dated June 8, 2009. However, it is our understanding that no remediation has been completed to date for the areas of concerns for the areas contained in the referenced Phase 2 report. It is also our understanding that when developed, it is anticipated that a licensed New Jersey licensed site remediation professional will be retained to advise as to current remediation requirements. 3, was a no further action letter received by the NJDEP for block 12301. in specific regard to the three areas of Block 12301 associated with the township's housing element and fair share plan, the township is not aware of any no further action letter for Block 12301. For the 5-acre and 10-acre parcels, currently lots 3 and 4, as of 2007 Phase 1 reports, these parcels did not require remediation where NJDEP oversight was required. Therefore, no further action letters were not required. For the area of Block 12301 contained in the 2009 Phase 2 report, the township is unaware of any no further action letters issued by the NJDEP. Okay. Now we'll open up our second public portion. This is for any item that the public chooses to address. Each speaker is entitled to 5 minutes, and there is a maximum 30-minute time limit for the public portion. Does anyone like to speak during the public portion? Mr. Polidoro. Ms. Smithman, you're next.
Good evening again, Council. Ray Polidoro from Ariel.
Good evening.
Through the years, we've had discussions about banking caps, and I know that Tom has tried very hard to get me to separate the appropriations from the levy. There are still some things I'd like to be fine-tuned on, and that being with the appropriations. When you bank that cap, when you bank the cap on the appropriations, does it have to do basically with the amount of spending or appropriations that you're going for that particular year? By banking that, is that basically taking away from doing a sound budget and spending that we don't have to cap? How does banking that cap stand to be advantageous for taxpayers? Could you tell me that?
In terms of the budget, the cap bank on the appropriations is good for a 2-year period after the period that the budget period that it goes through. So in other words, it's that one and back 2 years. And what that does for you is it essentially rewards you for being under the cap by giving you the ability to raise the cap to whatever that cap allowance was by the state under the COLA ordinance.
You use it or lose it type?
It is a use it or lose it type situation.
And the state makes you do that, or is that just something you continue to choose?
It's all prescribed by the state under NJSA 48.
So, and help me understand. So, if you didn't bank that cap, you'd have to live within more strict means before setting up a budget?
Yes, it would put an extreme constraint on the appropriations in the budget.
Well, if it's
Take, for example, gasoline. Is gasoline staying within 2.5% of your budget at home? Because it's not with ours. So items like that, health insurance, other items that are inside the cap. Because remember, when you have a budget,
Right.
you have items that are inside the cap, outside the cap. Debt service is outside the cap. Pension expenses are outside the cap. They recognize certain things that are uncontrollable.
And I get that, and I want to utilize my time wisely here. But if you're banking it, you didn't quite need it. You're banking it just in case later it will allow you that flexibility.
We'll know that until you construct your budget.
I mean, that's slippery slope. And like I said, I know that you keep quoting the state, and I don't think much of them to be a great guidance for our municipality, because if we keep going down that path, we'll be no better than the second worst state in the union. The other thing is you'll be working on the budget again come soon. It has always been the practice and habit and pattern of this body and the administration to bank the tax levy too. That'll be coming up. When you do that, and the more I see of that, our tax increases have not been small, 8, 9, 10. And by banking the cap, that allows you to do that. Now, obviously, you don't have to stay within the means because you got plenty of debt and you continue to get debt. And it keeps growing and will never, I'd say to you, ignore the cap because you can do that by borrowing and never stop borrowing. But has it ever been a thought of this body or the administration to not bank a tax levy, to not be able to say, well, we bank it, at least later on, 2, 4, 6, 8. We can bang for 8%. We're not limited. We're not within means. Let me put it this way. I'm going to ask if, for as many years as I've been coming here, would you forego banking that cap of the tax levy so that maybe down the road, we're not looking at the tax increases that we've been seeing in the years that we had? Would you even let it cross your mind and think about that? Anyone?
You want to comment?
No, good.
Yeah, that's not a voluntary program. That's not like the coal ordinance that was passed tonight.
I'm talking about the tax
all-
levy.
That's all prescribed by the state.
They make you do that.
Yes.
It's
part of the
mandated.
budget
You have to-
process.
You're telling me that you have got to pass and
It's
bank
up
the
to
cap
us.
2%.
It's up to us where we set the amount.
I'm asking you if the state mandates that you do that.
They mandate the process.
No, I'm asking, do you have a choice to say
Your
no?
first comment was, let's to or not to bank cap. That's not how it works with the levy. The levy cap is a book. It's a workbook. It's calculated. It comes out to exact figures for every municipality, all 565 of them. They're all going to come out the same way in the same method. It's up to you in terms of how we create a budget and what that amount to be raised by taxation is and how it compares to that cap levy tax workbook in terms of what the maximum allowable amount to be raised is.
And I know my time is up, but I'm going to pose this to you this in the most respectful way. If maybe we ignored the advice of the state of New Jersey and you did what's best for us and made that decision what's best for us and leave them out of it, you don't have to do that.
It's not a voluntary program.
They're not making you do it. You
Yes,
can
it is.
choose.
It's
Tom, we've been
part of-
down this road.
Right, look it up. It's under 48.
You've always told us that it was according to the guidelines and it was not mandatory.
Every municipality calculates their tax levy workbook.
But I'm talking about the banking the cap on the levy. We don't have to do that. We don't need those numbers. My time is up.
The decision is what you set the levy at. That's what the decision.
Let's do it for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Is there anyone else? Ms. Smithman?
Good evening. My name is Shaughnessy Smithman. I reside in Millbridge Gardens Apartments on Millbrook Court, apartment 341, postal zip code 08021. I've brought up at several meetings different topics. One common thing that I've noticed within the community is the lack of connection of the community to the municipality, such as the local police department for Gloucester Township and the local fire department for any issue that could arise for any citizen. I had tried using my cell phone to dial 411 directory assistance, and I was unable to get a municipal listing. The automated system only will give a computer-generated listing for either a business or a residence. It does not give you a municipality phone number to call a non-emergency police or fire department. I've been trying to think of different ways on how we could place that information to make it available for everyone, as many as we could think of. Because not everybody has access to the internet. Not everyone has a phone. Not everyone knows how to read, whether they don't speak the language, whether they are simply illiterate, or whether they're still children. But everyone, I feel, should have an opportunity to try to connect to the local non-emergency police and the local fire department. I've made several suggestions. One was possibly placing the information on United States Postal Service designated letter drop boxes. I was told that that's not possible, that there's not to be any information on you called it a federal item? Would it be possible, possibly, to place a plaque, a pedestal, within a regulated distance, whatever is agreeable with the United States Postal Service, the federal government, that would contain, in whichever municipality it is placed, wherever the United States Postal Service letter drop box is, whatever municipality it serves, to place the address, to indicate it with a picture, one to indicate police, another to indicate the fire. On that designated pedestal, place it in Braille, so the person is blind and mailing a letter, they will know where to find it, and they will know whatever department they're trying to reach, either the fire department or the local police department for that municipality. They could place it in raised or recessed letters so that if someone cannot write due to either a handicap of the hand or the inability to write the language, they could simply place a postcard or envelope against the raised lettering or recessed address and make an engraving so they could mail a letter. It could be at wheelchair height so that anyone can reach it. There is not municipal things located in all houses. I grew up not in this township. I grew up in Monroe Township. I grew up in Williamstown in a borough called Cecil. I was trying to think of the things that might connect someone like myself to the government, because there were many issues I could have brought up. Street signs are everywhere. And the United States Postal Service, we had a mailbox. I was very fortunate. We owned a home. My parents owned their home. Storm drains. That was about it. Would it be possible to also consider putting this information on every street post? Wherever there's a street sign, if they could put this information there. It would be very helpful, and more than appreciated, if you could also make this information available to the local bus drivers. From what I understand, they're federally protected, or at least state protected. The bus drivers could have this information made available on the receipt that they give you when you ride the bus. Or if they could possibly have a postcard made available to them to hand it to somebody trying to ride the bus, and local gas stations. You don't need to speak the language and to drive a vehicle. You just need to have a driver's license. But people go for gas, they take the bus, they have a street sign. May I ask, where's the local water? Being homeless myself within Camden County, I found it very troublesome that they did not have local water available anymore. May I ask, where is the local water?
When you say local water, can you explain? What do you mean?
Where is the local watering hole? Where would someone go for water, free water that is available to everyone should you be homeless, or visiting or walking if you're parched? Where's the local water fountain?
Well, there wouldn't be, we don't have a local watering hole.
Do you have a water fountain? Do you have a lake that you're allowed to drink from?
I would advise doing that. Ms. Smithman, your time is up.
Well, I wanted to ask because you could place this information also wherever local water is available.
Thank you for your comments. If we have additional time, you can come back up.
I would like a response. Is there any way that we could have this information placed on any of these items?
At the last meeting, we addressed some of these concerns you had. Your concern is having the police department and the fire department accessible to all residents.
That's correct.
And we've gone over this about 3 or 4 meetings. We discussed this, that you contact 911. And even if you contact 911 and you don't have the main number to the police, the non-emergency number, they will direct you to that non-emergency number.
Did you discuss this with the 911? Did you contact anyone that works for 911 to ask them if that is acceptable?
I have the police chief who sits at every meeting, and has a direct relationship with we have dispatchers here, our own dispatchers here in the township. So they would direct you to the non-emergency number. But thank you very much for your comments.
These are not comments. I'm asking, is this anything
When I'm
that?
responding to Ms. Smithman, some of the things that you brought up, it's just not feasible. Last meeting, you talked about putting phone numbers on fire hydrants.
Well, I was trying
After
to
I
seek
left the
something
meeting,
that,
I went to Pizza Point because I was hungry, and I passed a fire hydrant on Shoes Landing Road by the firehouse. I don't think anyone's going to have a piece of paper to go over a phone number there. If you contacted 911, they're going to direct you to the main number. Thank you very much for
not
your
everyone has a
comments.
telephone.
Ms. Smithman, thank you
Not
very
everyone
much for
has
your
a
comments.
telephone.
Is
And
there
if they
anyone
could,
else?
they could
Ms.
go to your
Smithman,
local restaurant where you
Smithman,
went
your time is
and
up.
get a piece of paper.
Thank you very much for your comments. Mr. Krug.
Evening again, Council. Paul Krug, Blackwood Estates.
Good evening.
Just really quickly, Ms. Smithman, I have to disagree on the community engagement, at least of the police department. I'm currently in the GTPD Citizens Police Academy, which is, I believe, a 14-week program in which citizens can volunteer to learn about our police department. And I've received a lot of contact information as well as other additional information about our police department, including the fact that we have a truck that goes out to neighborhoods with video games so that officers can play video games with children and do community outreach. So maybe these are the type of things she's looking for, but I wanted to note that I think the police department does an excellent job in their community outreach, and it's pretty well publicized. I want to have you recall we started a conversation at the last meeting on two topics. The first was the Blackwood West amended redevelopment plan and whether or not a implementation plan for that, because it was really more of a vision statement and we need an implementation plan in order to execute. We heard tonight what's been put forth by the state and the MPP program. I talked about that being in one lane. I know of at least one community organization that's currently spun up and is trying to move things from a resident and business perspective forward. But that other lane is what's going to happen here, what this council oversees, and which is the redevelopment plan for downtown Blackwood. So I was wondering if there was an update or we could continue that conversation about how we're going to implement what's going to be happening here through this council and township.
I don't have a specific update, but I would imagine that some of the efforts that the MPP, because there are members of that MPP group, planning group, that are also part of Blackwood West, that some of those things there's going to be some cross-pollination of some of the things that are taking place in there. I would imagine that's been a discussion in some of your meetings, Jake and Regina. But I don't have an update for you. But I think I'll sit with Jake and Regina and get some additional information about the conversation that they had with some of those stakeholders.
Okay, understood. I just want to make it clear to council what the MPP is doing is very specific with regard to preserving a downtown, and the state structure for that is specific into what the money can be used for. But of course, there's a lot more that needs to be done. It's going to be a heavy lift to flip that area, and we're going to need the support of this council and the township in order to move things forward. One thing that I don't think that they can do, that maybe this council can do, is change the messaging. And don't kill the messenger here. I'm simply bringing what I've heard from both inside and outside the township, which is that there's a perception that it is difficult to come into this township as a small business owner, specifically dealing with our construction department. And that narrative needs to change, because there's a fear for small business owners in the cost, bureaucracy, red tape of coming into this township. So that's one thing I think we can absolutely do, this council, and as the township, is change that narrative. A public relations outreach, flying the flag that we're open for business, especially for small businesses who have enough on their shoulders starting out, saying we've put together a streamlined process for you to come into this township, could be a very powerful thing in conjunction with what the NPP is doing. So I'd ask you to take that into consideration.
Paul, this is something that all of us here have heard. And I think one of the ways that the administration has chosen to address it, we have a new director there, Director Borelli, who has been in leadership roles over the last 30 plus years throughout South Jersey. And I have, from my time that I've been here on council, have fielded a lot of those concerns and questions about our department. We have a good group of people that work up there, but the process, it has to be a process where it's business friendly, where things are streamlined, that permits are submitted, and places are inspected, properties inspected, and we move forward. But that is a concern that we have voiced to the administration, and I know Mr. Carter, as our business administrator, oversees all those departments, and that's something that he has tried to address over the years. So we're looking forward to working with Director Borelli and moving that department further along and addressing some of those concerns, because we've heard that. Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Appreciate the insight. And once again, I think if all three of those lanes can be aligned to the same goal, I think there's a real chance we can get some momentum behind what we're trying to do here. I thank Jake and Regina for their efforts and you for yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Mr. Sweet. Mr. Heimbaugh, you'll be after him, and you'll be the last speaker.
Sam Sweet from Ariel again. Couple quick questions and a follow-up one. How much money is left in the Gloucester Township grant program? Do we know?
Is that for the money that we use for?
The $10,000, the one that was originally 5, that's up to 10? I know.
It's about 75,000. 75 grand? Okay.
All right, do we have an updated list, or can I get one emailed to me of?
We can provide that too. I would not have that here. I did not anticipate that.
No, I understand. I didn't, I saw Jake and it triggered my memory on that. Is there a reason that residents can't get on the committee, the MPP committee?
There.
We were told, I've been told that it's full and that they're not accepting any new people.
It is currently full, but there are residents serving on that committee.
Okay.
Is there a reason we can't get more voices on there?
Said it was full.
I understand that, but who puts the cap on? Like, why couldn't we add, say, Mr. Krug, who's, passionate about it? Like, why is it full?
There was a call for people to participate, am I correct? And the individuals that asked to participate, they selected those individuals. But they're telling me that
So what was the criteria? Because a lot of people would maybe want to join up or have other voices. I mean, it's never, having more of opinions or more insight, it's never a bad thing.
well, I'll speak to Jake and Regina. We'll take that under consideration.
Okay, and back to the capital budgets.
Yes.
I know we spoke about, we don't know what we're doing with the 6.8 million and we're waiting. Might it behoove council to hold off on borrowing that money or putting a bond ordinance together until we can find out whether that 6.8 can be used to offset that? Because as we all know, we're in budget season right now. And as we all know, increased debt increases taxes. And I don't think anybody here wants to increase taxes or see increased taxes. So would possibly wait until the state
comes by and says that you can use that for infrastructure, or you can use that on the capital budget, so that way, or a portion of it, so maybe to lower our debt?
I'm not, personally, I don't even know what the timeline would be for the state to provide that guidance to us. And I don't want to hold up some of the projects that we have listed in our capital budget.
So is
That's
there,
me personally.
okay,
But again, we have 2 weeks, council members can review it, and we'll have a hearing on that before we vote in 2 weeks.
Mr. Cardis, could Mr. Cardis call the state and find out when they're going to be issuing those guidelines? Because you said the federal government issued them, correct?
Yes, you can.
I mean, the federal government has issued the guidelines, so now it's just a question of the state approving them or saying, yes, you can do this, no, you can't, or here's what it can be attributed to?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, so a phone call perhaps to that division?
It's merely to ask when the local finance notice will be released. It hasn't been released yet.
But could we find out when, get a timeline? Because like if I said to you right now, when will the budget be available? You would say sometime in mid-April, potentially.
I don't have a problem whatsoever calling and asking when do they anticipate it to be released.
All right. That's it. I'm just asking, just trying to lower, keep our taxes in check, because I'm seeing that we're borrowing, 8.7 because 5% of it has to be put up front, correct? So we're borrowing 8.7, which is the largest we've done in the last 6-7 years. And I realize we have a lot to do, but if we can earmark some of that money and save the residents' taxes, I think it should be done. I think this council has all said time and time again that, you're all residents here too, and you don't want to see the taxes raised. But yet every other year we seem to raise taxes. And I get that, but here we have an opportunity not to raise taxes, or at least one portion of them. I think we need to look into that a little more wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There was, Mr. Highball. He's our last speaker.
Yes, thank you. Peter Heinball, Morningstar Court. I just kind of have a bullet list of questions. One, what is the status, Resonate Bliss, the cannabis cultivator, what's the status of that lease agreement that was being worked on?
I believe that was signed, or it's circulating, or approved for signing, but nothing has come back. Not seen anything come back to my office. And I can look into it. If I knew you were going to ask that question, I could have looked into it ahead of time.
Okay, thank you. A question on the budget transfers that were approved at this meeting. Those relate to the 2021 fiscal year, correct? Are these the last transactions then for 20? So when can we expect the unaudited financial statement to be completed and available?
I'm not sure with the specific deadline. I have to get back to that.
Sure. Thank you. Next question. We had department head budget hearings last week. Is there any feedback or anything of note that occurred during those department head budget hearings?
None of council can comment because we're not involved in those budget hearings, department meetings.
I would have to tell you no. They have been submitted in writing to the CFO. She's compiling the budget right now, but no, there were no changes.
Okay, thank you. Final question. Earlier this month, Gloucester Township presented our fair share housing agreement to the courts. I guess a formal presentation to the courts. How did that procedure go?
Earlier this month, they presented their fair share housing.
Yes, we.
February 9th, there was a hearing or a court.
We were received very favorably. Right now, there's no objection to our compliance and our settlement agreement. Settlement agreement's been revised, the market affordable that we talked about a lot being removed, other items being put in. Fair Share Housing Center is in agreement with the proposed settlement agreement. We have this month to introduce our spending plan and the ordinances that are necessary. We have a hearing coming up the end of the month for signing of the fair share. So that status that we're in now is a compliance and amended settlement agreement. It's anticipated that it will be signed at the end of the month, and the township will be complete for another 5 years.
Thank you. You mentioned the hearing. What's that? What's the hearing? The spending hearing or what?
Well, we have presented before this governing body ordinance to approve our spending plan, how we plan on the dollars that we have, COVID dollars. And it's coming up, I think, the last meeting of this
A
month.
public hearing in this chamber you're talking about. Okay, that's
Be an ordinance, I think.
right. I see. Okay.
And our hearing scheduled with the reports for the end of the month. It's anticipated as a signing of our settlement agreement.
Okay. And you mentioned the market to affordable was removed.
Correct. Market to affordable is not part of our plan any longer. It's been represented that we're still working with market to affordable, but that part of our compliance has been removed.
So it's still an active program.
Still an active program, but not within the four corners of our compliance.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. That concludes the second public portion. Polling of directors,
Mr. Parliament,
Nothing to report.
Mr. Cardis,
nothing to report.
Chief Harkins,
Just a couple of things to report to council. Last Tuesday, the Pennsauken Police Department had one of their officers that died suddenly, unexpectedly. So we provided assistance, mutual aid, both that night, was kicked in our mutual aid plan for the county. And then on Sunday, when the funeral services were, we had officers working. Very admirable, come together. Everybody worked really well to assist that department in need. And just to let everybody know to keep in your prayers, Mayor Barry Wright of Winslow Township, neighboring, he was a retired police lieutenant, 27 years from the Winslow Township Police Department, and good partner to our administration in our town. He's a good man, public servant, passed away this weekend after a long fight with ALS. So just let council know. Have a good night.
Mr. Chadwick,
Nothing to report.
Ms. Grace,
Thank you, Chief, for sharing that. I actually have quite a few friends over in Winslow and text them my condolences, so appreciate you sharing that. Everyone have a good night.
Mr. Mignon,
Thank you all for coming. Be safe going home and have a great week. Thank you.
Mrs. Stubbs,
Thank you for coming, everyone. Take care.
Mrs. Winters,
Thank everyone for coming, and it's nice to finally see after, almost 2 years, everyone back up here on the dais, so it's a nice thing to forward progress, so please stay safe.
Mrs. Trotta,
Thank you all for coming out and have a good week.
Mr. Mercado.
Thank you for coming out this evening. April 2nd, the township is now, it's an annual thing, but the last 2 years we haven't done it, is the Easter Funny Brunch at the Rec Center. That's a free event for all our residents from 10 to 12. And then the following Saturday here at Veterans Park, through the streets of our town, is the Gloucester Township 5K race. There's a 1 mile walk, a run. That raises money for the Gloucester Township seniors that will be attending college the following year. That's part of the Gloucester Township Scholarship Committee. So if you're interested in those activities, please attend. With that, I entertain the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Have a great evening, everyone.
People love it. Just to wear. If you got it in your house,